Good afternoon, everyone. As you can probably tell, the culturally attuned among you, I am not from around here. Unlike the previous speaker, I'm not going to give you the gospel advice. What we do have instead is sort of two things for the price of one. I'm going to talk to you a bit about some evidence that we've collected from the independent retail sector here in the United States over the past year to understand a little bit more about their customer base, but also about their feelings towards the supply chain. Steve here, some of you may have seen him talk here yesterday about the goals that he sets for himself and the sort of issues he deals with when selling to his customers. Today we're going to get him to kind of turn around and look sort of the other way in his role as a buyer, one of the senior buyers at Wine Library, to talk about what he needs from people selling to him. So in a way, kind of following on from what Jerry's saying, my stuff will be more kind of scene setting, I suppose, and give you a sense of, ultimately, why are people buying your product in this country? So hopefully this will work. I have a terrible habit with technology of making it go wrong. Bing, bang. All right, very quickly, Wine Intelligence is a research company, as Steve Ray just told you. We operate in about 24 countries around the world. We've been here in the United States now working for about 12 or 13 years. We have a network of researchers in this country, a network of people in the wine trade who we work with, mainly acting as a sort of listening station for them to tell us what they're feeling, how they see the opportunities of the market, and also some of the issues that they've got. And it's some of that data that you'll see coming up now. So I guess the first thing to talk about is a bit of the context in terms of this sector of the market that we will call specialists and independents. Now, there are some competing definitions here, and what I don't want to do is to kind of get into the weeds on it, but in effect what we're talking about is anything from an owner-operator single-store business up to a small chain of, say, 8 to 10. So Steve's business, the Wine Library, very much in the sort of towards the former end of the category, and then you've got these sort of either mini chains or networks leading up to the latter. And they are obviously competing with everybody else who's selling wine in the United States. And as I'm sure all of you know, the regulations of who can sell wine does vary from state to state. And again, I'm not going to get into all of that. But essentially what you've got is supermarkets, these sort of big box stores, the club stores like Sam's Club and Costco, and then these sort of privately owned wine shops, which we're talking about now. And of course, the state control you heard from the former Pennsylvania State Liquor Board chairman yesterday. I guess the point being here that in this highly, highly competitive market, what we're seeing is a mild shift away from what one might call traditional supermarkets. The club stores are becoming slightly more important. The big box liquor, so the sort of specialty superstores like Total Wines, are expanding apace. And in and amongst all of this, amazingly, this sort of entrepreneurial, smaller, fairly feisty group of people who run these smaller liquor store chains and or owner-operator businesses are also doing reasonably well. What we're also seeing is this broader shift in the retail imperative. So on the one hand, as you can see there, you've got this sort of idea, perhaps quite an old idea, Steve, wouldn't you agree, of this sort of basically kind of selling based on price and points. It's price and points. It's $15, it's a 90 point. It's $10, it's 89 points. Or it's 97 points and $50. And this very simple set of metrics that have served the industry actually reasonably well, because it's something that a customer can more or less understand pretty quickly. I'm getting this, I'm paying that. It's very simple. That's still quite an important dynamic. What we are seeing now is a move towards the idea of selling not just price and points, but a culture and a lifestyle. So, Jerry's point before about how you sell cachaça in this country is actually very well taken in this context. The idea behind selling a Portuguese wine, a Spanish wine, an Italian wine is not just about saying, well, Parker gave it this or Suckling gave it that. Actually, it's also about saying, this is a cultural product. It has a certain sort of lifestyle implication about it. And sure enough, by buying it, you're going to be sort of a part of that culture. Maybe you'd want to understand a little bit more. Now, not surprisingly, this appeals greatly to a certain group of people who are now coming into the wine category, not necessarily the people who've been in the wine category for a while, and you probably know who they are. So it's basically the people under the age of, say, 35, who have grown up in a world where they actually can, by just dipping into their pocket, getting their phone out, understand a great deal about a great deal very, very quickly. So, I guess the point that we're trying to make here is wine isn't hard to find or buy anymore. It's actually quite easy. And actually, it's very easy to look stuff up. If you've got, again, your phone, you can look at Cellar Tracker, you can look at Vivino, you can even just look at what your friends are doing. And sure enough, you can find something you can buy. The independent retail job, therefore, is not just to say points and price. It's to say points, yes, price, yes, but look, this is an artisanal product, this is an interesting product, this is a product from this culture, this is why you should buy it. So, this kind of message is probably going to appeal more to certain people than it is to others, and our work in consumer behavior research, which is primarily what we do, has yielded a couple of useful insights, which I'm going to share with you. One is this idea of a consumer typology. Now, this is a broad generalization based around, interpretation of data. So, clearly when you get into the detail of this, it's not quite so simple. But broadly speaking, we've got two types of drinker walking into a given liquor store on a given day, and they are either type A or type B. Type A being people who just either brand or what one might call very singular driven customers. So for them, brand could be Barefoot, it could be Rioja, but equally it could be Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay. And then you've got this type B, this involved consumer, who might be thinking more broadly, that actually wants to interact with the product. They may have lots of knowledge and they're just trying to test the poor salesman. I'm sure Steve's seen those people come into his store. But equally, they could be genuinely interested in learning more. And this point that Jerry was making in the previous presentation, again, very well taken. The point that you, as the salesperson selling to the customer, need to remember in your mind is the 3 or 4 key sort of elevator pitch points that are going to turn somebody who was going to spend $10 or $12 into someone who's going to spend 20 and buy a product that probably will be worth a bit more to them, but it's certainly worth more to the retailer. So, looking in more detail just at type A and type B, the brand-driven consumers, their influence are, the traditional critics and the traditional media. Their motivations are really about staying safe and familiar and getting their money's worth. They're really paranoid about not getting what they pay for. Their sales activation is really about, what's everybody else buying? What's big on the floor? What's being bought at the till? And also they're reassured a little bit by when, there's a load of bottles out and you can taste stuff. And to be fair, without going into too much detail about them, they're not really good at the interactive bit because it scares them. If Steve here wanders up to them, they'll just sort of shy away a little bit and go, yeah, I'm just looking. Which is kind of me, actually, in a shop, too. Like, go away. These people buy with their eyes rather than their palates, which was a great response from one of our trade surveyors. And the point about these guys is, look, they're always going to be there. They're not going anywhere. They're always going to be brand driven. They're always going to be led by convenience. But, for some people in this room, they are good business. They're not people that you or I should ignore. They're not going to be just people who buy barefoot. They will buy other things, but they're going to do so in a very conventional way. And this is then about how you get to the point in your distribution that you might become that go-to brand for a certain customer on a certain occasion without having the hand sell, without any of the, sort of cultural influences. It is possible. So, type B. I think probably based on the nature of the room and the people in it, this is a group we're fundamentally a bit more comfortable with. They are a bit more involved. They actually care something about the category beyond just, oh, it's a nice drink. They might have been on a winery tour once upon a time. They may have been outside the United States and gone traveling. They may have been to Europe. They may have been to Australia and New Zealand. They kind of know a few more things about the world. They are experience seekers, and they're looking for a partner in your retailer as somebody that they can trust and sort of a fellow traveler in that exploration and experience seeking. And their sales activation is pretty straightforward if you can imagine this person, which is they'll go and seek out advice. And their advice may be electronic in nature, or it may be young Steve over here. And really the ultimate goal of going into a liquor store as opposed to going to Costco is actually just to expand their knowledge, even if it's just by a little bit. They're not looking for an encyclopedia. They're not looking for a long lecture from our salesperson. They're really just after, well, one fact, a dinner party fact. So, what's really exciting about the US market right now is we are seeing that type B customer base expand. They are getting more numerous. Now, this could be a cultural thing, it could be a generational thing. There is quite strong evidence that this group correlates with younger sort of, I hesitate to use the word millennial. I've been told by my team to stop using it, but let's call them younger and more involved consumers, because not all younger consumers are more involved, and not all older consumers are less involved. But let's just call them about younger and more involved consumers. They are growing up a bit now. They've been with us probably for about 10 years, more or less, in the wine market. They're getting used to the idea of wine, and indeed beer as a cultural product. So these are the guys that are also drinking craft beer. Therefore, these people are going to be the bread and butter for the independent and small chain wine retailer, probably for the next 20 years, we would say. Growing in importance. The people coming after them, sure, they will be a factor. And us Gen Xers, we're not going to go away. We're going to stick around. We're going to still buy. But really, these are the people in the middle, this Generation Y, who are going to be the key drivers of behavior. So, if we could try and bring this together, and so I'm going to give you the evidence and then turn things over to Steve to talk more about the sort of the attitude, I suppose, the things that need to happen as a result of us knowing things. We have some strains happening in the supply chain. And those of you who've been listening to these talks over the past couple of days will probably know this reasonably well. You've got, at a producer level, a proliferation of products, availability, lots of people trying to export now, sell more, but actually still you've only got 25% of the US market being devoted to imports. You've got a very, very large domestic industry. It's tough, crowded place to be. And supermarket chains. Some of these guys have been trading fantastically for years, and then they wake up one morning, there's a Total Wines store that's just opened down the road, and their entire consumer dynamic has changed. And then finally, on a positive note, the consumers are becoming more open-minded and more interested in moving beyond what one might call the standard wine that one might be able to buy in this country, and that's typically Californian mainstream brands. So, in a positive sense, we have some good opportunities at the supplier end and the consumer end. In between, we've got some challenges. So, Steve, in the interest of time, do you want to tell us the story from the retailer's point of view?
Thank you very much. You can all hear me now. A couple of quick things. My name is Steve. I'm working at the Wine Library, and I'm back.
Now.
Thank you.
Now it comes back.
Thank you. So a couple of quick things. I have about 12 minutes to talk. I have 2 slides. Take out your camera phones, take a picture of slide number 1, so that you can then hear what I have to say. What I have to say to you is broken down as such. I'm going to validate the wholesalers that are in the room, number 1, and the suppliers and the wineries that are in the room. And then I'm going to have a couple of things I'm going to share with you in so far as like a pep rally kind of thing. And then I'm going to share with you my experience, and again, this is about me and my experience with wineries / suppliers and wholesalers interacting directly with me. Okay, so it's a kind of a nice flow from this afternoon where there was a pitch of how do you pitch a brand to a wholesaler. Now it's really about how does a wholesaler pitch a brand to a buyer. And then there's going to be an opportunity for questions and answers, and Richard has flown all the way in here from London, England. First person who asks him a question gets $1. Actually, I have a return bus trip ticket to New Jersey, so either one. The first person who asks Richard a question, well, not the bus ticket because I can't get home then. First and foremost, as a buyer, we need you so badly. We sell product every day. As a buyer, whether that be retail or a bar or a restaurant or what have you, we need wholesalers all the time. Okay, so what differentiates one wholesaler from the next, from the winery to the next, are things like this: relationships. All right. The thing you should first do, if you haven't already done it, is go on LinkedIn and look at the people's speakers who are on this panel and link in with them. Like tonight. Don't wait till next week. Don't wait till July. Wait to do it tonight or tomorrow or the next day. Because if you're not, to quote the great Ricky Bobby from Talladega Nights, if you're not first, you're last. Okay. Who has seen Talladega Nights? Rent day. All right. Good. If you're not first, you're last. Get out there and connect with people. That's why this is such an awesome thing. Relationships matter. Relationships turn conversations into money. Okay. Make those relationships, make them happen now. But just, making a connection is one thing, but you got to give a damn. Okay. Tell me what you're looking for. Be straight up with me what your agenda is. We all know that you deal with a lot of buyers and a lot of different accounts and such, but as far as I'm concerned, when I'm standing in front of you or sitting in front of you or sitting next to you, I only want to know what you're going to do for me. Now that's a little selfish or what have you, but the reality is because I need you. I need you to get me product. Kind of rule number 2, I'm going to skip around a little bit actually, because in the same line, learn my tells. Every buyer has a hand of cards that they hold. Learn my tells. Learn what I really am saying between the lines. So Richard comes up to me, he's got 2 different types of vodkas he wants to pitch to me, and I'm like, I'm not buying any vodka. And he looks behind me and there's a shelf of like 400 different vodkas. I'm not buying any vodka, or I'm not buying anything. Okay, no problem, I'll come back to you. But I actually do have 5 cases of Kistler Chardonnay that we have sitting in the warehouse right now. And I could absolutely offer that to you. Okay, good, done. I thought you weren't buying, So the reality is that we are always buying. We're always buying. Don't let a buyer tell you we're not buying, because we're always buying. Getting back to needing wholesalers, needing wineries, one of the reasons why the private label movement has been so strong for so many years is because strong retailers are not getting the gross profit that they need to be strong in the market from suppliers and wholesalers. The other reason is because it's actually kind of cool to be able to go direct to the winery and get that direct in. But it's a failure on the part of the wholesalers. I'm going to say that again. It's a failure on the part of suppliers not partnering up with retailers to the degree to make them strong. We are so as are you, as are you. You're all in a very ridiculously competitive market. Retailers, bars, restaurants, we are dying for product that can make us strong and stand us in relief to our competition, okay? So when you have the opportunity to present product to a retailer, to a buyer, or to a group of buyers, do it right. The profit margin thing is going to be really, really important. So do it with a way that's going to have a product that has a great storyline, is sellable, is just an amazing product with good gross profit. Okay. Just following along the suit with these different points, I'm going to jump to sell me. So this is like, yeah, duh, no kidding. But sell me. Okay. Don't be an order taker. When you're coming to an account and you're making a pitch, sell me. Find out what makes me tick. Look at the promotions that I do. Look at the wines that we have on the shelf. Look at the liquor that we have on the shelf. And speak to me in the language that is reflected in the products and the promotions that I do. If I'm a score whore, if I love points and I sell by points, you should be pitching me product that has good points. If I love big names, Heidi Barrett, you know, Chuck Wagner, blah, 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 blue. If I love iconic winemakers, that's the language you should be using, okay? If I'm a huge wine geek and I want to, you know, but I'm terrible with selling Barbaresco, which I am, but when I found out that there's a Barbaresco that actually used to sell their fruit to Gaia, and now is doing it by themselves, they're actually making their own wine, I literally lifted that line and put it into my promotion, and I sold 22 cases in one day. It was just like, so you have to help me sell, but do it in a way that it's using the same kind of language that I use in my promotions or in the product lines that I have. Sometimes it's not very apparent, you know, but you have to kind of work it. And the selling piece is important because, similar to what I was saying yesterday, sales equals service. If you're not selling me and it's not exciting to you and it's not important to you, it's not going to be important to me. The other piece to it is sales equals commitment. If you're really hammering about like the products that you have, and the gentleman who spoke before about the cachaça, I actually remember him from a decade ago, because he sold me cachaça, he did. And I remember he came in, he's looking all casual and everything, but he had conviction in spades. This was a guy who so believed in what he was selling, I was taken. I wanted to date him, I loved him. I was like, brother, I love you, man. So anyway, the point is he had conviction in spades. Believe in your product, because if you don't, I won't. If you don't, I won't. The other thing that's really kind of cool from the study that Richard had just done looking at the Boston to Washington corridor, which, by the way, is a report that is available in more significant form. If you're interested, you should absolutely hit Richard up. It's a pretty special report. But what's really cool about it, and what's kind of driving this whole conversation, is that the brand buyer, yes, will always be here. You'll always have your Kendall Jacksons. You'll always have your Santa Margaritas. God bless them. We don't make any money on it, but God bless them. But what's happening, as Richard was saying, there is a burgeoning group of consumers that are getting bigger and more vociferous and more exciting every week, every month, every year. And those are the people who are actually moving the needle to have us, force us to step outside our circle of familiar suppliers and to look for people like the people that are here in this room today. I'm looking for new suppliers all the time. I just probably should not have said that, because you're going to hammer me later. Oh, so you said you were looking for new suppliers. But the reality is that we are looking for new suppliers all the time. Why? Because our market is pushing us. Our consumers are really excited about what they love to drink and explore and blah, blah, blah. They are pushing us to look for new product, new categories. Bulgaria is coming on the scene. Croatia, Slovenia, English sparkling wine. Yes. That's all coming onto the scene. It's all coming online very quickly. In the next 5 years, the market will look totally different. What does that mean? That the traditional gigantic wholesalers are going to start to pick up these little fledgling kind of categories, but it's the artisanal suppliers that are going to really make tremendous inroads. So if you're banging on doors today, keep on banging. Do not give up. Do not let up. Because the reality is that the market is going to kind of meet you, and you're going to be needed very, very soon. So you cannot give up, ever. So just in a quick nutshell, I have 3 minutes left. In a quick nutshell, brand buyers are moving us to buy, brands. So if you're a supplier or a wholesaler that sells brands, it's a visual thing. Okay, so keep thinking as a brand's wholesaler. Let's take Kendall Jackson just because. Kendall Jackson, stack it high, watch it fly. We want to see displays. We want to see, good rips. We want to see good promotional material. We want to see good gross profit built into every bottle that we sell. So that's kind of a quick little thing about brands. Artisanal brands need stories. The beauty of artisanal brands is not much distribution on them. So they're not going to get crushed in the marketplace in terms of price. There's a lot larger gross profit built into artisanal brands, which is a beautiful thing because it's what actually moves strong wine stores and strong restaurants and strong bars to actually go after those artisanal brands because they have the clientele that will buy it. We're very attracted to that. So you've got to have salespeople. You got to have. So this is the kind of the rules and the hints part of the evening, or the afternoon, I should say. You could take a picture of this if you'd like. But the reality is that we, as in my experience, my conversations with colleagues, the process of going through putting this report together that looked at the marketplace, the retail marketplace from Boston to Washington, the common things were we need suppliers that know how to A, speak about their product intelligently, quickly, in timely fashion, and B, can kind of talk wine. So not mispronouncing Cabernet Sauvignon, knowing how to say the different varieties. I'm not mean to be mean, but the reality is that's very real. But knowing how to speak about wine. If you don't like wine, I don't really care, but know how to speak and to sell wine. Know the difference between like Burgundy and Bordeaux, the very basic stuff. You don't have to be a rock star, but the reality is that you should just kind of know those basic things. Wrapping this up, be Teflon, have resilience, be persistent, never give up. The other part that's really important is go at the pace of the buyer that you are actually kind of connecting with, and invest your time in knowing and understanding that buyer at his or her pace. And the last piece that I will say is, and this is something that's really important, you're not going to have all the answers to questions that a buyer is going to ask you, but you're the direct pipeline to that winery or that distillery. Use and escalate to your resources as you are getting questions. If you don't have an answer to something, don't say, I don't know, and have period. You actually have to escalate it to your people. So don't perseverate, escalate. Escalate to the people that are in your food chain to get answers for that buyer, because he or she needs that information, So that's in a very quick nutshell all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time, and we want to open it up to questions. And
one question.
We have time for one question.
Gentleman over there. Thank you. I can go now.
Type A and type B consumers, you said the percentage is changing. Where does the percentage sit right now?
I can probably give you the answer, but I'm going to have to send it to you. I'll come and pick your card up. It depends on how you define them, but off the top of my head, we're looking at sort of still about 70-30 in favor of the branded. But what's happening is that 30 is probably going to become 35 over the next 2 or 3 years, and we're probably going to see moving towards parity, but I don't think we'll ever get to the point where the artisanal buyer is dominant in the market. So let's not get overexcited. These guys will still be the minority.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.